Hare Krishna, and welcome to our fourth and final class for the light of the Bhagavata. Jai. We'll be looking at the last 12 verses, verses 37 to 48 today. So we'll start with some kirtan and then a review of last week's classes, and then we'll conclude the light of the Bhagavata and take any reflections. Hare Krishna. Passing over to Kishore Gopi for some kirtan.
Jai. Okay, so come into your comfortable seat. Do what needs to be done, shift what needs to be shifted so that you can land and arrive here for the next 75 minutes or so. Let's take a deep breath in and a clearing breath out. Inhale through your nose. Exhale, let it go. Our opening prayers. Inhale. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Bhakti House Samgandhyan ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Hari Hari Bol. Can't hear you. You're muted, Shamya. No. Strange. Okay, I'll keep chanting then, huh? Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol.
Gaur Premanande, Haribol.
Haribol, and he's back.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarupyascha Kripasantupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanepyo Vaishnavepyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay. Welcome to the last class of the Light of the Bhagavata. Let's start with any reflections from anything that stood out from your reading so far. Meditations on nature and spiritual lessons to be derived by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
I really enjoyed reading verse 28. The fully beautiful scenery after the rainy season was attractive to the eyes of everyone, including Sri Krishna, the cause of all causes. And then just a takeaway from what you said last week, it was, seeing the beauty in the world connected to the divine. So
Beautiful. Yeah, that beauty isn't the problem. In fact, beauty is inevitable. Even if there's ugliness in the world, there has to be beauty. And the problem is having an unhealthy relationship with it. It's like an unhealthy relationship with any of Krishna's opulences. You're going to have an unhealthy relationship with beauty, where you want to be the beautiful, or you want to enjoy beauty for yourself in someone or something else, like you're putting yourself in the position of Krishna, or an unhealthy relationship with money, unhealthy relationship with power, fame, knowledge. They're all just different energies. That's all they are. They're not problems. And so we're all about reconnecting those things and seeing the beautiful and being like, well, if we can offer to Krishna, and at least just consciously connecting that this is Krishna's energy. Thank you. Any other reflections?
Amy has a reflection.
Yes.
Verse 29, I think it was, about the purification process. Like the covered sky and the uncovered sky is one and the same. Just gets covered like our soul. And the bhakti is like a process of cleansing our soul of the material nature.
Yeah, just like the sky is temporarily covered, and from the point of view of when you're on the ground and when the clouds are up there, they seem like a big deal, right? Because you can't see the sun, you can't see the moon, you can't see the stars. So it seems like the clouds are really powerful, but actually clouds are insignificant things from the perspective of like the sun, right? Or like if you look at it from outer space, they're just passing through. In fact, clouds are actually a creation of the sun. The sun pours all this energy onto the ground, water evaporates, it goes into the air, becomes clouds. It's just like Krishna's material energy seems like a big deal. And to us, from our point of view, it is. It's much stronger than we are. But from Krishna's point of view, it's insignificant. And so when we take to the process that's directly connected to Krishna, the bhakti process, just like clouds clear up, they can't stay there forever. They're just an external imposition. So similarly, we in our relationship to Krishna, we become cleared up. There is no longer covering, a lens, mud, dirt, obscurity. And so we see ourselves, we see Krishna, and everything flows naturally. Thank you.
I was thinking about with verse 35, like the burning up of a small puddle, that verse, and of how you were speaking about how if we live beyond our means or our capacity, whether that's overconsumption and buying too many things or living off of credit cards. I was also thinking of it from like doing more than we can, like doing too much, and then also how that it's like our energy is also burning up in a small puddle, and then there's not as much energy to put towards your spiritual life, towards your sadhana, and there's like that overwhelm, in the sort of chaos of overdoing.
Yeah, that's a product of the mode of passion. At this current time, and in general, but particularly like in this part of the world, in this current time, there is like we're living in a culture that really is about the mode of passion, that glorifies passion. That if you can stay out of ignorance but be in passion, then you're successful. There's not much understanding of what goodness is. So often there's this objection to spiritual life of like, well, I don't have time. It's like, well, you have the same amount of time as everybody. But we've created a culture. To be fair, we have created a culture and we've inherited a culture. We're born into and inherit a culture that is very taxing. It takes away your energy. It demands a great deal of work. In just the last 30, 40, 50 years, the amount of work it takes to maintain like a household is gone significantly up. It takes a lot of work. We're running really hard just to stand still. And those are all because of mode of passion ideas. So it's unfortunate at a societal level, and it's unfortunate at the individual level when there's this misapplication of energy. Like we'll work really hard for the things we consider important. It's like, but we'll actually just over apply ourselves and leave ourselves spent and useless and having to just kind of yo-yo back and forth between overworking and losing yourself in intoxication or sleep or some other kind of forgetting distractive process just to kind of like sort of get back to stability. And this is something that's going to come up in today's verses too. Thank you. So let's get into it. Starting from verse 37. I don't have a copy of Light of the Bhagavad here, but you can always, Kishori, hold up the pictures as you see them, and we'll look at them that way. So verse 37, with the inauguration of the autumn season, the rough sea becomes calm and quiet, just like a philosopher after self-realization who is no longer troubled by the modes of nature. Right. Prabhupada says, the result of self-realization is cessation of the storms of desire and lust, which are products of the modes of ignorance and passion. So, whereas like in material culture, mode of passion culture, being kind of like overtaken by desire and full of passion is considered a very good thing. In mode of goodness culture, we recognize that's actually like material passion is just a burden. It's a storm, right? Just like having an itch. You can think, well, when I have the itch, then I feel good when I scratch it. But it's like, not really. You just artificially create a situation where you need to scratch it. You do, and you kind of feel like the opposite effect of what you had when you're itching. It's like, oh, the itching sensation's gone. So relatively, I feel good. That's all it is. Actually, just being is good enough. Just existing, being satisfied with that. When you artificially create an itch and then scratch it, like, oh yeah, this is happiness. That's mode of passion. So those are like storms. So similarly, after self-realization, just like the sea becomes calm and quiet in the autumn season in that part of the world. So similarly, like we're no longer pushed around by the storms of greed and hankering and lust and anger and those kinds of things. It's just like on the sea, if you have a storm, you don't know how long it's going to last. And you don't know when you're going to get to your destination. If you're going to get to your destination, maybe it just sinks you. You know, we're not sure. It's so much bigger than us. It's so much stronger. It pushes us around. At least it's a waste of time and energy, just getting out of that. Similarly, getting out of these degrading experiences has a cost in terms of time and energy. But by the process of bhakti, those things become dissipated and simplified. So Prabhupada talks about how too much of an external view of the world gives rise to an overly large scale and difficult type of industry and trade known as ugra karma. Ugra means hard or difficult. It even sounds difficult, ugra. And karma means work, task. The development of hard and difficult industrial undertakings always hinders the progressive cultivation of the human spirit. So overly complicated, overly engaged, overly involved mode of passion activities implicate you more and more in work after work, activity after activity. And they get in the way of introspection, get in the way of clarity, get in the way of knowledge, self-realization. But the opposite happens when we take to bhakti, is that our lives become simpler. Our application of energy becomes simpler. And we start to see, at least at first we start to see, oh, wait a minute. Even if I'm living the same way I always used to, I'm seeing, well, this is actually extracting a cost from me. You know, running around this way is actually like getting in the way of being peaceful in my mind. We start to be motivated to start to do something about that, to simplify our lives. The famous adage by Srila Prabhupada of simple living, high thinking. So that's what this verse is talking about. It's talking about how when you take to self-realization, you become inspired and supported. Actually, you get the tools, knowledge to live simply and think higher instead of think simply and live higher. Simple thinking, high living. Verse 38. After the rainy season, the farmers begin to rebuild the partitioning walls of the paddy fields so that the water will be conserved, just as yogis try to use their conserved energy for self-realization. Just like Kishore was talking about, you know, we have a certain stock or a certain reservoir of energy. And there it is, those rice fields, they have those like natural walls, you know, like dams or dikes. And the human body is like that, human mind is like that. And so the human mission is one that includes like being aware of what our reservoir of knowledge is and how much we can do with what we have, right? It's actually precious. So like something that takes your attention, that takes your time, your energy, it's actually like wise to be discerning. Is this worth my energy, right? For example, we live in a time where we have almost literally unlimited knowledge at our fingertips, right? True or false? Yes, you'll never actually read every single Wikipedia article. Not even in one language. There's like 12 languages on Wikipedia, each with over 1 million entries. Not even in English will you read all the articles. Not possible. What to speak of everything else that you can find on the internet or your phone or a library? Not possible. So we actually have to be discerning. Otherwise, we just take whatever comes to us, whoever shows up at our door, whatever idea comes to us first, then all the billboards will seem like great ideas and all the pop-ups on your Internet Explorer or whatever. It's like we have a limited time and energy. So Prabhupada's talking about this in the purport. He says, the energy of our senses is meant to be diverted, not stopped. The senses are to be purified so that they serve the Lord instead of disturbing his settled harmony. The entire cosmic harmony is a settled fact by the will of the Supreme. So we must find the Supreme will in every action of the cosmic situation. The human life is an opportunity to understand this cosmic harmony. And therefore, our conserved energy, which is likened to the conserved water in the paddy field and the rice field, must be used for this purpose only. As there is no chance of rain from the sky in autumn, we shall not immediately have a chance to get a human body again if we spend our conserved energy for sense enjoyment, right? It's a privilege. Having a human body is a privilege. It's actually a great privilege. There are certain things that only humans can do. relative to all the other forms of life we see on this planet. And so it makes a lot of sense to understand what those things are. It's not eating, it's not sleeping, not defending yourself or fighting or mating or any of that. That's all, we have that in common with down to like bacteria. It's inquiring, it's knowledge, and ultimately it's inquiring about our real self. It's developing self-knowledge, self-realization, connecting to the supreme. This is a capacity we have as human-bodied souls. And so the privilege we have of greater energy as humans is meant to be applied in those ways. That's where we'll get the most benefit, because we can use it for anything. We can use our greater privilege as humans, our higher intelligence, our capacity to create time-saving technology and structures and systems and societies, to use that spare time and energy for anything: recreation, war, sleep, eating, anything you like, sex, spirituality. And so that's the junction point. Human life is actually this place where we have so much freedom to decide what to do with our spare energy. Animals don't really have that as much. The lower you go in terms of when the consciousness becomes more and more covered, the less discretion they have, the less discretionary time recreational activity they have. Like the higher mammals can play. Otters play, dolphins play, dogs, cats, mammals play, right? Do reptiles play? Not so much. How about amphibians? Maybe fish, plants? Like the room gets smaller, the cell gets tighter. You know, it's more just like do what you got to do because you have to. Super Soul guides you to stay alive, and that's it. No, not much discretionary time, no recreation time. It's a cell without much free time in the cell block, out of your cell block in the open space, right? You don't get like library time or time on the weights. Just like in a prison, for good behavior, you get certain privileges. Human life means a life that you've got certain privileges. You get time off for good behavior. You get privileges for good behavior. That's what it means to be human. So using that privilege means just like you have a certain reservoir of water in a rice field, or farmers have to very carefully ration their water, because if you use it all in the dry season when it's not raining, guess what? Your field's dead. It's all over for you, you know? Irrigation, water control, this kind of thing is like key. So our life is like one big irrigation project, carefully managing our energy. When you're young, it's not so much of a big deal. You're like 15 years old, you have unlimited energy, maybe too much, don't know what to do with it. But as you learn, when you get even 30 years old, it's like, yeah, my energy is decreasing every year. So I have to be very discerning what I use it for. Okay. Verse 39. In the autumn, there's a gulf of difference between the day and the night. During the day, the extreme heat of the sun is unbearable, but at night, the moonlight is extremely soothing and refreshing. Similarly, Lord Sri Krishna is soothing for both the gopis and the mundane man in illusion who accepts the body as the soul. So Srila Prabhupada writes, as long as the living being under illusion accepts the body or the mind as the soul, they will always be unhappy, like a man in the burning heat of autumn. But when the same living being becomes a devotee of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, they at once live a soothing life, as if under the cooling rays of the moon in autumn. Krishna is so merciful that he descends to reclaim suffering humanity, preaches Bhagavad Gita with the intense desire that all living beings give up all their engagements and take shelter at his lotus feet. This is the most confidential part of all revealed scripture. So in all spiritual traditions, in all scripture, the final word, the final instruction for the human is just surrender unto me. It's there in Bhagavad Gita. Literally, Krishna says that just surrender unto me. This is the most confidential instruction. It's there in every spiritual text that doesn't just avoid or fail to address the issue of the divine supreme person. Unless he's not there at all, there's always this point of surrender. So from the conditioned soul's point of view, surrender seems like, well, that's really for Krishna's sake, like give up everything, you know. Surrender is like this word of like, oh, I lose, right? The person who I'm surrendered to, they win. So surrendering is like giving up and giving in to Krishna. Actually, this verse is showing it's not like that at all. It's actually for our benefit. Krishna's not saying in Bhagavad Gita, surrender unto me because I really am greedy for you. Like, like some kind of power hungry, money grubbing, mustache twirling villain, ha ha ha, they've surrendered. I will make the whole world surrender, take that 007. Like it's not like that. That's kind of like, it's crazy, right? That's how we think of spirituality. It's how we think of God and religion. On some levels, like, oh, surrender, like, cringe. It's a cringe-worthy word. I don't want to surrender. It's like you need to surrender. If you don't surrender, you're suffering, just like living in this situation without an active relationship to Krishna is like being scorched. So in classic poetry in Vedic scriptures, the moon is considered very cooling. The moon is just a very poetic instrument for cooling and offering peace and solace and comfort. In fact, Krishna, one of his names is Krishna Chandra, the great moon of Krishna. Krishna is beautiful like the moon. The moon is considered to be extremely beautiful, especially when it's full. We had a full moon yesterday, actually, Balaram's appearance day. Balaram appeared on the full moon, Jai Balaram. And the full moon is a very beautiful, very wonderful phenomenon. So Krishna is very beautiful. And also being on the moon's rays is very refreshing. So there's a way in which that's the poetic device that's used. It's just like in the autumn season, you have the beautiful full moon in autumn is actually considered to be like the most beautiful moon of the year. And so similarly, there's this analogy here that without being relieved, without being under that moonlight of Krishna, we're just being scorched without any cessation, without relief, right? Erin has her hand up. Go ahead.
I was just looking back through my notes and I can't find it. You had given a really beautiful definition of surrender. I believe it was when we were studying the Bhagavad Gita. Does that ring a
Definition of
bell?
surrender. Well, let's see. Can't remember off the top of my head, but surrender, yeah, surrender means like to deliberately choose Krishna and to try to, well, one thing I did say was to be one in purpose, right? Sometimes like impersonalists will think like, okay, so our whole goal is to merge, right? I become the supreme. I lose whatever a sense of identity I have. That's all false. It's all false. It's not real. I'm actually just the supreme. I have to give it all up and become that. That's not our perspective. That's not the perspective really of any honest appraisal of Vedic scripture. The goal is not to merge. The goal is to become dedicated, right? So dedication means oneness, purpose, right? We still remain two. In a relationship where you're one with the other, you're still two because there's one in the other. That's 1 + 1 is 2. But the purpose is one, it's not two. As soon as the purpose is two, there's friction, right? Because my idea is here, your idea is here. I'm orbiting this place, you're orbiting that. We bump up against each other. But as soon as our middle point is the same, I'm aiming there, you're aiming the same place, we're in unity, we're in union, right? So with Krishna, we're surrendering ourselves to his will. What does he want? And that's a function of learning what he wants and step by step offering ourselves in that way, right? That's actively, deliberately surrendering. Yeah, sure. So surrendering isn't giving up, it's handing over. Yeah, the material idea of surrender is like a wave the white flag, you win, like a surrender in a war. Like the surrendering party is a loser. Like it's not like that. We actually become so much the winner by surrendering to Krishna. We deliberately choose him. Sometimes it takes a bit of a nudge, as Krishna points out in Bhagavad Gita. 4 kinds of persons surrender unto him: those who are distressed, those who are seeking wealth, those who want knowledge, and those who actually want to understand the supreme truth. So sometimes we come to spiritual life where we're motivated because of severe distress or poverty. That happens. It's like, I don't know where to turn. I've got nothing going for me. Like I'll may as well pray. And that's actually very pious. But ultimately, our mature surrender isn't a function of being back to the edge of the cliff, right? It's actually a function of deliberately choosing Krishna, right? Just like in our relationships, we don't want someone to say to us, "Oh, why'd you choose me?" "Oh, actually, I was totally desperate." I would have taken anybody. I was totally desperate. I had nothing going on. I wanted just relief, sweet relief. It's like that's not a very deep relationship. That's a pretty superficial connection. So similarly, mature surrender to Krishna isn't just because we were impelled by circumstance. Arjuna was impelled by circumstance, but that's not the final word in Bhagavad Gita. He's like, I can't figure this out. I need your help. And then he hears and he chooses step by step by step until he's like, yep, I get it. And I definitely choose you. I choose my relationship with you, Krishna. By the end, 18 chapters later. So, some thoughts on surrender. So, back to the purport, this analogy of the sun, the moon, the cooling, refreshing moon. Lord Chaitanya recommended the feeling of the gopis as the highest mode of worship that can be rendered to the Lord. Right? That feeling Prabhupada describes as these eternal consorts of the Lord terribly suffered the separation of Lord Krishna when the Lord was absent from their presence for his engagement in tending the cows in the forest. During the absence of Krishna, the entire day would appear to the gopis to be as unbearable as a hot day in autumn. The conclusion is that the regular practice of bhakti yoga, will lead the devotee to the plane of intense love for the Lord. And that is the single qualification by which the conditioned soul is allowed to re-enter the eternal life of bliss in the kingdom of God. The threefold miseries of material existence are at once nullified by intense love of God, which is the ultimate goal of cultivating the human spirit. Or ultimately, our material problems cannot actually be solved in a final way on the material platform. There's no material solution for the material situation. The solution is a spiritual one. As Einstein himself said, great mind, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness on the same level that created it. You have to go higher, right? So categorically, all material problems do not have material solutions. Ultimately, they have material adjustments, but they don't have solutions. You cannot solve life and death through material adjustment. You have to transcend it. You have to transcend material reality through bhakti yoga. And then you're experiencing that soothing, cooling Krishna moon, right? That's not replaceable. There's no material experience of adjustment that can substitute for that. Let's pause here for any questions or reflections or comments so far before we go to verse 41. Anything that stands out, we can explore.
This is going to be much more general, but I just want to relate it to an experience I had today and last night. So, a lot of friends right now are going through the things that we all go through. And, I kind of shared a little bit about this book with them. And one was a devotee for a while. I'd not heard of this book, and kind of talked a little bit about the idea of seasons and how the temporality of the seasons and how the heat comes and the cool comes, etc. And just, we can zoom out and look at our life as a ongoing rise and fall of seasons and see, what comes and goes and what Krishna kind of has in play. It just makes it all a little bit more palatable, right? And it makes our head be able to grasp the concept of like what's at play here. So I just want to thank you, because it was just such a cool thing to be able to share with somebody that was kind of going through it and kind of in pain and kind of saying, hey, there's this beautiful book that we've been reading. And they were like, oh my gosh, can I be in a study group that does that? Like, it was really, really special. So thank you. And like, even today, we've just been talking about the seasons and when autumn comes, oh my gosh, all of a sudden it's beautiful. Life is great. Like, it's nice and cooling and we're refreshed and we have it. But the heat's going to come again. And so once we can zoom out and see that this is just the nature of the material world, we can kind of, just kind of get that more of that even temper, just being like, cool, it's really nice and cool, it's going to leave. So thank you for giving us that ability to have those conversations.
You're welcome. All glories to this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can feel free to invite your friend to our study group, or just give them the YouTube links and they can listen. Yeah, Jai. Anything else? Comments, reflections, questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So often when we talk about the sun and the moon, we talk about Krishna and Radharani. but here we're talking about Krishna also the moon as the moon rays, you know, and of course Krishna is the source of everything, but I'm just curious how Radharani plays into this because this is also from the 10th canto, you know, where their Leela is, you know, is shared. So I'm just,
Yeah. Well, it becomes confusing if you mix up analogies. Like, for example, there's a nice verse about Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanandao Suhoditao Gaudo Daye Pushpavantao Chitrao Shandao Tamonudao, which means all glories to Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya who have arisen simultaneously, like the sun and moon. Normally the sun would never rise simultaneously, but this verse by Vrindavan Das Thakur is saying they came up just like the sun and moon arising over the horizon at the same time. They're miraculously bestowing benediction on everybody, dispelling all darkness and giving the highest benefit to everyone. So the sun and moon are like classic comparison points in poetry. One way of bringing Radharani into it is Krishna is the sun, she's the sunshine. Energetic, energy. Masculine principle, feminine principle. Right? Just like we're like one of Krishna's energies, we're like part of that sunshine. She is the totality of Krishna's energy. And he is a total energetic, that which possesses the energy. So you can think of it like that. Moon, moonshine. She's not directly in this that way, because actually in this context, Prabhupada in the verse is talking about how the devotees, like the gopis, including Radharani, she's a gopi, they're missing Krishna. They're looking to him. They're in love with him. And that experience of being in love, the verse is talking about how that experience of being in love with him is actually the solution to all problems, all material problems. And so she's actually in the verse that way. She's in the verse through her example of devotion. She's the perfect devotee. And the 10th canto is full of pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan and other places, but all in relationship to him, Krishna. And so she's there also with other devotees in Vrindavans, gopis, and so forth. And the chat, also thinking about in relation to Lord Balaram. Yeah, Balaram is compared to the moon.
yeah, you were speaking to that, like as Mel popped that in the chat. You were like quoting the verse.
Yeah. Okay. We'll continue. If there's any more questions, reflections, we'll stop a few more times. Verse 41. In the clear sky of autumn, the
Prabhu, did we
beautiful
do
moon among
40?
the beautiful. Sorry?
Did we do 40? Did we do verse 40?
Let's see.
I don't think we did.
You're right, we didn't. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Verse 40. In the clear autumn sky, the twinkling stars appear brighter and brighter, just like a transcendentalist clear vision of the purpose of the Vedas. Right? There's a special quality to the sky when you can actually see the stars. Just like there's this phenomenon of light pollution. You live in a city, you have this thing of light pollution. You can't see the stars as well because you need contrast, you need darkness and clarity. Even on a clear night, if you have street lights and so forth, you can't see the stars as well. If you go out to the country where it's actually dark, you can see so much more. So this verse is saying in the clear autumn sky, because now the rainy season's over, the sky's become cleared. Now I can see all the stars. And just like somebody who actually understands the Vedas, they're not clouded over, right? So in Prabhupada points out in the purport, in the scripture, it's actually described that one who studies the Vedas and is a devotee of the Lord, but also a disciple of a spiritual master, to them, they actually get realization of the purport, the actual meaning of the Vedas. It's not just revealed through independent study. It's not even just revealed through directly going to the Lord. It's revealed through devotion and submission to Krishna's own devotees. That there's this culture of respecting the teachers, respecting the devotees, and there's a way in which that opens up the heart and mind of the devotee to actually understand. Krishna reveals himself that way. Prabhupada's quoting the purport. The import of the Vedas is still more explicitly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The conclusion of the Vedic literatures is that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord and the cause of all causes. He has his eternal two-armed form as Shyama Sundara, which means the beautifully blackish one, with features exactly like those of a most beautiful young man, and that is the sum and substance of the Vedas concerning God. God is one, but the living entities, including both the liberated and the conditioned, are many and have many different grades of positions. The living entities are never equal to God, but as parts and parcels of the Lord, they are eternally his servitors. As long as the living entities are situated normally as his servitors, they are happy. Otherwise, they are unhappy. That is the Vedic conclusion. So otherwise, without clear understanding, people have had a variety of opinions about what the Vedas say or scripture, but just like at the end of the autumn season, the sky becomes clear and you can actually see the sky, the stars for what they are. You can see this naturally. Similarly, when we become purified through our bhakti yoga practice, those same books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, this book, Light of the Bhagavat, any bhakti shastra, any bhakti scripture, becomes clearer, right? When the clouds become dissipated over our own consciousness, it becomes actually crystal clear how Bhagavad Gita is about bhakti, for example. Bhagavad Gita has been respected in the West for like 300 years, and in the East for like thousands and thousands of years. And there are a variety of opinions about what Bhagavad Gita is about. But it's actually quite clear from even internally, just not drawing on any other text, it's quite clear that Bhagavad Gita is about the Supreme Person and surrender and love, devotion. And so that realization is not just an intellectual consideration. That starts to make sense when we become inclined to do service, when we hear sincerely, when we actually associate with devotees, when we experience their devotion, when that purifies our heart, when we practice bhakti, then that feeling of bhakti makes sense. The message that Krishna is saying, that surrender to me, I will help you, I'll deliver you, makes sense, right? There's no interpretation, there's no misunderstanding, or at least less and less. So there's this phenomenon of approaching spiritual literature not as a challenge to be overcome, something to be conquered, but through a mode of service, right? Through a mode of service. It's through the lens of service that scripture actually starts to really make sense. I think pretty much, not quite universally, but most people, the first time they read Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like this. Wow, that's really deep. What'd you catch? I think I heard the word karma in there and something about God. It's like, yeah, if you're lucky. It's like it's pretty deep, and it's way out of our context. There's a way in which, taking prasadam, associating with devotees, having that spiritual message enter our hearts, practicing kirtan, chanting japa, approaching Bhagavad Gita repeatedly, starts to clarify things to the point where it becomes an ecstatic text, and we start to associate with Prabhupada and feel like some of the glimmer of the ecstasy he was feeling when he wrote those purports, and what it was like for Arjuna. Just at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sanjaya, who heard the whole thing, and he's relaying the whole Bhagavad Gita to Dhritarashtra, what happens to him? He says, I'm thrilled, hairs of my body are standing on end. I'm feeling thrilled again and again, because he's a devotee. He's actually very pure-hearted. So this is a symptom of Bhagavad Gita, like entering the heart of somebody who's unclouded. So this verse is talking about that experience of realizing scripture instead of just kind of intellectually getting it, or maybe like debating it or thinking maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. Right. Eileen says in the chat, Sunday feast, we dissected chapter 11, verses 53 and 54, quote, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am. Yeah, bhaktiyat tvananya shakya aham eva vedorjuna. Nyatam drashtam cha tatvena praveshtam cha parantapa. Second last verse, chapter 11. Leading into the chapter 12, which is all about devotional service. It's literally called devotional service, chapter 12. Krishna makes it clear in like a good dozen places in Bhagavad Gita that bhakti is where it's at. And that's one prime place right there, end of chapter 11. Thank you. Good reference. All right. Next verse. Verse 41. In the clear sky of autumn, the beautiful moon among the beautiful stars becomes the cynosure of all eyes. Cynosure means like the focus point of all eyes. Just as Lord Sri Krishna is the central attraction in the Vrishni dynasty or in the family of Yadu. Srila Prabhupada writes, the sun is fixed in its own orbit and it neither rises nor sets, but because we first see it on the eastern horizon, we may say that the sun rises on that side. Similarly, the appearance of Godhead in some particular family does not mean that he is limited by obligations to that family. He is fully independent and may appear and disappear anywhere and everywhere because he is all-pervading. When we take to bhakti, we actually become aware of the central focus point. Just like when the sky is clear, we can see the sun and moon, right? You can see the stars, the moon, the sun. Otherwise, there's just kind of like a vague, all-pervading glow of light. It's all just kind of everywhere, but you don't know where it's coming from. Similarly, in material consciousness, we may get a sense that there's something spiritual, but what does that even mean? Things are kind of vague. Advanced spiritual life is developed knowledge of the personality of Godhead. You know, it's described. Almost remember the Sanskrit. Anyway, from Heti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate, second half of the verse. Vedanti tat tadvavidas tatmya jnanam advayam. This is Bhagavatam 1 to like 11. There are three aspects of divinity, of spiritual reality. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Just like when you approach a mountain from a great distance, the first thing you see is like a blur. You see like a large thing in the distance, and you're like, there's something. As you get closer, you can see shape and color and outlines, and you know, it starts here and it stops there, and there's a color difference, different things like that. And then when you're actually on the mountain, what do you have? You're like, oh, okay, evergreen tree, insects, this kind of breed, this kind of species, and like sun and biomes and biosphere, this biosphere, and there's a whole world, so much detail. Similarly, in spiritual life, there's Brahman, the all-pervading aspect. Then there's Paramatma, more specific, like the reciprocation we get in our heart, the presence of God in our heart as a super soul. And then there's the Supreme Person with all spiritual quality, spiritual form, spiritual pastime, spiritual quality, spiritual activities, right? In existing in spiritual relationship with other persons, his devotees. That's a very refined understanding of spirituality, is the Supreme Person. It's very intimate. So similarly, when the sky becomes clear, you can see the sun, moon, and stars, then you can understand what the focus point really was, where all that light was coming from, that was just diffused and refracted before. We didn't know where its source was. It's like, oh, there it is. There's a giant globe, you know? And if you approach the sun, I'm sure it would have even more and more detail. So bhakti is the process of approaching that supreme source. Prabhupada says in the purport, he quotes Bhagavad Gita 4:9, quote, my birth and activities are transcendental. One who knows them in reality will not be conditioned by another material body, but will come back to my abode where there is no birth and death. There's this point that Krishna's he's promising us that if you actually understand me, you become qualified to come to me. It's not necessary for you to take birth again. After you give up this body, you come to me if you understand me. You don't have to understand the universe. You don't have to become perfect in understanding other forms of life or even yourself perfectly. All you have to do is try to understand me, because he's the source, right? That's where everything is coming from. He's actually the focus. And if you understand him, you go to him. He's like the sun in the sky. Whether there's clouds there or not, he's the source of all light and heat. So better to go straight to the source. Better to go straight to that personal source and understand him, connect with him, develop that relationship in bhakti. Okay? Verse 42, and then we'll take another Pause for questions, reflections. At night in autumn, the atmosphere is pleasant because it is neither very hot nor very cold. The mild wind blowing through the gardens of fruits and flowers in Vrindavana appeared very pleasing, very much pleasing to all but the gopis, who were always overtaken by heartfelt sorrow in the absence of Krishna. So Prabhupada talks about this feeling of separation in the purport. There are two kinds of transcendental feelings for those engaged in the worship of the Lord. One is called sambhoga, the other is called viraha. Viraha worship is more palatable than sambhoga. Sambhoga takes place in direct touch, whereas viraha takes place without such direct contact. So the idea is that when we're with the object of our love, we experience a certain degree of connection, love, remembrance, but we actually experience deeper remembrance, deeper love when we yearn for them, when they're not directly with us. There's a way in which when we're missing somebody, we're so conscious of them. We cannot take them for granted. We're like hankering after them, right? Prabhupada says in the purport, in the mundane world, there is some shadow of such viraha. A loving wife, husband, or friend may for some time be maddened by the absence of the beloved, right? This is a material reflection of spiritual reality. The ultimate lovable object is Krishna. He is supremely lovable. Whatever feeling we've had for a friend, for a parent or child, for a lover or partner, that's just a reflection of what is our capacity to feel for Krishna. And as Lord Chaitanya himself displayed through his own example, and as his followers in philosophy is laid out, the mode of love and service for Krishna in a mood of separation is actually intense. It's an intensified experience. Beyond that, of feeling like you're with him. This feeling of missing, of not being qualified to see, of when will I have that opportunity, hankering. This is a very, very high level, high pitch of love for God. And this is actually what the gopis were feeling. Deep separation from Krishna. All day he'd be out there and they couldn't stand to be apart from him, you know? And that experience of missing him is, it's not like material suffering, because its relationship to Krishna is actually intense joy. But it's the intense joy of meditating on, dwelling on Krishna. And we dwell on somebody more when we're not with them, when we're feeling the separation. So this is a very high topic, but Prabhupada and the Bhagavatam are bringing it to our attention. Prabhupada writes, the devotees of the Lord cannot be happy in any circumstance without the Lord. In the absence of the Lord, the devotee associates with him by remembering his separation. And because the Lord is absolute, the devotee's feeling of separation is transcendentally more relishable than direct contact. Okay, let's take some, if there are any, let's take some reflections, comments, or questions. The next verse has one of my favorite statements in any of Prabhupada's books. It's got to be a top 5 statement, so stay tuned.
So this last verse just, reminds me of the adage that absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Thank you. Yeah, but it's like absence with consciousness. Like we're all kind of absent from Krishna when we're in our conditioned state, because it's like, God, who's God? I just see I'm, I'm busy mowing my lawn or whatever we're doing. But that's not really absence. That's just ignorance. But when you love someone and you think of them and you're dwelling on them, the heart grows fonder. It's like being in service to Krishna, feeling like you want to be with him. I really want to see you, Lord, but it takes so long, my Lord, my sweet Lord. George Harrison is singing the same mode of like, not, yeah, you're the best, I'm with you, yeah. It's like, when will that day come? That hankering makes the heart grow fonder. And in the meantime, we have like our service, we have our heartfelt offering, day after day, second after second of service in the mode of bhakti yoga connection. Thank you. Any other reflections, comments?
I think this is a really important verse and just teaching to remember, like when even just within our Sangha, there are many people's name where like, I wish I could be at more of the events that we're doing, or like, oh, I wish I could come to that Sangha event, or I wish I could have been there when we had pure devotees here and things like that. And it's like the fact that there is that hankering and that desire, like if you would have been there had you been able to, right? That is a gift that's even present.
Attending is a gift, but wanting to attend is also a gift.
Mm.
You can make the case that wanting to attend but not being able to is superior than attending but not wanting to be, but being able to attend and being there but not wanting to be there. You know, would you rather be living in a temple of Krishna surrounded by devotees and deities and the Maha Mantra and be thinking like, I can't wait to get out of here. I need to get out of here and watch TV. Or would you rather be like forced to be in the world but dwelling on Krishna? When, you know, thinking, hankering. So one of those situations is very fortunate. The other one, not so much. It's actually that desire. It's a great gift. It's a great gift. So if you have it in any degree, consider yourself fortunate, and use it to fuel your prayers. Like I wish I could read more. I wish I didn't just have to do all this other stuff. When will the time come when I can just read Light of the Bhagavata 7 days a week? You know, and that's a spiritual desire. I mean, Krishna's fulfilling all the desires of everybody in this world, life after life. If you start asking for that, watch out. You might just become ecstatic. So. Any other reflections before we move on?
I just really loved from verse 40 when you said you need darkness and clarity to see the stars.
Yeah.
Really, really beautiful.
Yeah, verse 40 was the one about the scripture and the clear purpose of the Vedas. Thank you. Okay, anything else? On to verse 43. In the autumn season, all the birds, beasts, and men become sexually disposed, and the bull, the stag, the male bird, the man, and other male creatures forcibly impregnate the fair sex. A similar impregnation takes place as a result of devotional service to the Lord, right? Just like the birds and the bees, you have this cycle of the seasons. So springtime comes, and I mean, I guess maybe it's different in India, but the autumn season, all the animals are now disposed to mating. So what does that mean for us spiritually? This is a beautiful purport. I recommend reading the whole thing. Actually, you should read the whole book, but read the whole purport, at least to this one. Verse 43, Prabhupada writes, devotional service to the Lord never goes in vain. Just at the right moment, the result of one's particular devotional service will come, even if one has no desire for it. The pure devotees do not wish any return from the Lord in exchange for their service. They do not make business exchanges with the Lord, but the Lord, out of his own accord, fulfills all the desires of the devotees. Here's the sentence that I really love. One should not be discouraged in the discharge of devotional service. Failures may not be detrimental. They may be the pillars of success, right? Failures may not be detrimental. They may be the pillars of success. One must have good faith in the regulative principles followed by the self-realized souls, and one should not be doubtful about the ultimate result of such devotional service. We should not consider going back to Godhead a plaything. We must take it seriously as enjoined in the scriptures. For a strict follower, the result is sure and certain. And then when the time is right, the result will come of its own force. What does it have to do with the verse? Well, pregnancy is a whole process. And it's like you may want to have a child, but there's a whole process. You got to wait a certain amount of time. You got to be ready. You have to perform the particular duties and you have to wait. And it's like when the time has come, then it'll come. And farming is like that too. You may want to reap your harvest in the summer, but you got to wait. Got to wait till the fall or whenever it's ripe. If it's not ripe, you got to keep waiting. There's no arguing with it. So it has its own time. Bhakti is like that. It has its own time. So we may feel like, when will I overcome this problem? When will I develop pure love for Krishna? And we should see that we're making some progress, but it's natural to feel like I'm not perfect yet. And when is that going to happen? And this verse is saying, first of all, setbacks don't have to be viewed as the whole story, right? Failure is seen as detrimental when we take it as the all in all. It's like, how you doing? Oh, terrible. I just failed at something. It's like, okay, but if you zoom out far enough, everyone's always failing. You know, the people who fail the most are the ones who succeed the most because they keep trying. You know, Michael Jordan failed, Mozart failed, Einstein failed, Prabhupada failed, right? Spectacularly at times because they kept trying and they had gigantic vision. So on the larger scope of things, it's not detrimental that you fail because it could be the pillar of your success. It's like, well, what did you learn? What did you get that can actually create lasting success? So that's one thing. Is that, and the other thing is that there's a natural way in which the rhythm, the season of it is not under our control. Just like for a farmer, it's not under your control. For an aspiring mother or father, you don't get to decide when to have a child. You know, it's like it's gonna come when it comes. Maybe you'll be doing something and it's like it's inconvenient for me to give birth now, but it's gonna happen, like, you know, like it or not. And maybe you want it to come earlier or later. It's like, just be ready. That's all. Just be ready. That's our business. Let Krishna decide from his own sweet will when he wants to bestow the gifts of bhakti. They come independently. They're not karmic because you don't own them. You don't control them. Surrender means whenever you want, Krishna, whenever you want. The last verse of the Shikshastakam is Lord Chaitanya praying like this. You can make me feel your presence by your embrace, or you can break my heart by not being with me. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to stop serving you. I'm not going to stop when it's hard, and I'm not going to only serve you when it's easy. I'm yours. I choose you. You know, that's real love. That's real connection. That's real willful choice. And so for us, it's this thing of like, yeah, there's going to be failures. That can be the pillar of success. And just like any natural process has its own rhythm and its own timing, it's bigger than me. And sometimes that even means wait until you leave your body, as one of the next verses is going to point out. Sometimes it's not even like it's going to happen in this life. Maybe it happens at death. Verse 44, in the autumn season, all the reservoirs of water are full of lotus flowers. There are also flowers that resemble the lotus, but are of a different class. Among them is a flower called kumuda. When the sun rises, all the flowers but the kumuda blossom beautifully. Similarly, lotus-like men take pleasure in the advent of a responsible king, but men who are like the kumuda do not like the existence of the king. So Prabhupada talks in this purport about the necessity of having enlightened leadership. And there's a way in which honest persons are happy to have enlightened leaders. Dishonest persons don't like it because they know, like, oh, now I can't get away. I can't get away with what I'm doing, right? Thieves, persons who are deliberately breaking law. It's like, I don't want a strong leader. They thrive in the absence of strong leadership. So Prabhupada talks about the nature of leadership. We talked about this earlier, that leadership is enlightened leadership means being the most qualified servant. Prabhupada writes, persons who want to exploit the administrative power for their own self-interest do not like the presence of a good king. Although professing democracy, they want to be kings themselves. Thus, they compete for votes by bad propaganda and take pleasure in having politics, but no king. Thieves and dacoits also take no pleasure in the presence of a good king, but it is in the interest of the people to have a well-trained king as the head of the state. So the nature of sincere versus insincere citizenship. 45. After the new grains were cut and brought home from the paddy fields, the people began to observe the Navana ceremony everywhere in the presence of the Lord as Sri Krishna and Baladev. So Prabhupada is talking about receiving nature's bounty with gratitude. No one can manufacture these things in man-made factories, however scientifically advanced people may be. Spiritually cultured people therefore feel obliged to the Lord when they get sufficient natural foodstuffs by the grace of the Lord. We should always acknowledge the mercy of God. We should not think that we can produce ample food grains merely with the help of tractors and fertilizers. These can help us only as instruments. Without the sanction of the Lord, there is no possibility of having grains, even if there are trucks and fertilizers. So this like point of understanding that even our material situation is a gift. The air we breathe, water, food. Verse 46, the merchants, preachers, kings, and students who were confined to home during the 4 months of June, July, August, and September began to flow out and attain success in life, just as perfected souls attain the required body as soon as they leave the present one. So in the rainy season in India, June to September, it pretty much rains nonstop, and you're advised to stay in one place. Prabhupada writes, the people in general are advised not to leave home during the 4 months of the rainy season. These 4 months are known as Chaturmasya. And for everyone, there are specific rules for observing this period, partly for health, partly for spiritual realization. So students can't go to school, merchants can't do their business, kings can't go out to their states, the preachers cannot go, the sannyasis cannot go to preach scripture. You're stuck in one place. But you're advised to go inwards. You're advised to invest in yourself. And then when the roads are cleared, the mud is dried, the rain stops, the clouds are gone, then you're shot out of a cannon, right? There's a way in which like you invest in yourself and then you go out and you do your required activity, your desired activity. Similarly, we're living a Chaturmasya-like period of life. Our whole life as a human being is like one period of the rainy season. We have one lifespan here at a time to invest in ourselves. And whatever we invest in, when the body is done, then the results of all of that start to really show. You can actually see the results even during life, but there's a way in which, as Prabhupada writes, you cannot always get all the results. Some of the results only happen when you leave your body, right? There's a way in which like the cumulative effect of whatever you've done takes, it starts to really bear fruit at the time of death. If we want to go to Devaloka, the planets of the demigods, we must achieve the required qualifications. The same is true if we want to go back to the kingdom of God. If we want to remain on this planet in some better condition of life, that will also depend on the required achievements. In any case, those achievements can be fulfilled just after one leaves the body. So there's a way in which like it can be helpful to view this life as like a little study period. And it's a short life. It's over pretty fast. And although you can see results of your activities in the here and now, there's a way in which they also have kind of their own rhythm, as the previous verse said. And so sometimes we're not going to get the full benefit until we are leaving. There are many experiences of devotees, many pastimes with devotees who do sincere service for years and years. And then as they're leaving, you know, they're dying. They're surrounded by devotees. There's kirtan. They have remarkable level ups in their bhakti, in their realization of Krishna. They actually see him. They converse with him. Different things happen. You know, I mean, I'll share one pastime. There was a senior devotee. I can almost remember her name. I think it was Rasagya Dasi. She was a Prabhupada disciple. She served the deities very faithfully. She was a pujari. And when you're a pujari, your life is a life of very like regulated, ordered service. And internally things can be happening, but externally things are very much regulated. And so there's a certain flow. And we don't know, I mean, I didn't hear what her experience was like through the years, but we do know that she was very sincere in her practice. So much so that like, you know, when she was serving the deities, she was in a cold environment in the winter. She would wake up very early before the required time to wake the deities because she wanted to get their clothes and iron them because she didn't want them to have cold clothing. You know, you have to have that feeling where you like wear warm pajamas out of the dryer. It's pretty good. Pretty good little feeling. She wanted to give that to Krishna. So she would do this. She would get up and she would like iron their clothes and she's thinking about like, oh, I want their little bodies to feel warm. And she did this, regularly in the cold season. This is attention to detail. This is love. This is like, you can't teach this. There's no deity worship manual that says wake up at 2:45 and iron the Lord's socks so you can put it on his little tootsies. No, this is all spontaneous. So as she's training up the devotee who's going to take her service, she's very old now. She's like getting ready to leave her body. She's getting this young woman is getting trained to take the service, and she herself has been passed on what she knows, but she never really told anybody about this. She didn't tell anybody she was waking up to do this. It was between her and Krishna. No one else knew. So how do I know? Well, as she's leaving her body, she was in that final pastime. The young woman who's taking her place goes on the altar, starts doing the service, and she has a dream. And in her dream, the deity comes to her and says, go to this devotee and tell them I'm deeply grateful. Tell them I'm deeply grateful for all those times that they gave me warm clothing. And she went and she told Rasigya, and Rasigya was flabbergasted because she'd never told anybody. She had never wanted to show off. It was never a public thing for her. There was never any sense of like, I want other people to learn from this, or I want to get attention. It was just between her and Krishna. And the deity made sure to glorify their own devotee and to make it clear that I noticed it. And so these kinds of things can happen. And these kinds of realizations can come. This fruit can actually become ripe at the time of death. It's like, it's up to Krishna. And so he may, for any number of reasons, may not give this realization 40 years earlier. Maybe to maintain humility. Maybe to set an example of steadiness. Maybe because the devotee is just so humble, they're not even asking for it. We don't know. It's up to his own sweet will, but there are many such pastimes. So it's important to understand that there's a way in which after we exit this rainy season-like existence of one life, just like when you exit the 4 months of study or 4 months of penances and austerities, you find like, oh wow, I've really leveled up. You don't even really know till you get back out in the world again. So that change of venue makes it clear that like, oh wow, I've actually really grown. Like you graduate high school, you look around like, oh, I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. So this is like a little high school life. And when you graduate, then you can start to see like, oh wow, I really picked some things up in these last few years. 2 verses left. Let's conclude. Verse 47. From the transcendence, which is called Krishna Loka, there emanates a glowing effulgence that resembles the tail of a comet. This glowing effulgence is unlimited, immeasurable, and unfathomable. Within this effulgence, there are innumerable glowing planets, each of them self-luminous. Somewhere, a limited part of that glowing effulgence is covered by material energy, just as a part of the sky is covered by a cloud. Within this material energy, there are innumerable universes. In every universe, there are innumerable material planets, and the Earth is one of these planets. Thus, we can understand what an insignificant part of the entire cosmos is this globe on which we live. That's some context for you. So the verse is giving us a giant zoom out. Giant zoom out. One disciple of Prabhupada had a great deal of responsibility and was like so in so much anxiety for it. Spiritual responsibility, not they weren't thinking about their own material situation. They're taking service on for Krishna, but they're really lost in it. And Prabhupada said, in response to the devotee complaining over and over again, Prabhupada said to them something like, just like this verse says, there is an unlimited number of spiritual planets. And in a 3-to-1 ratio to all spiritual reality, there's material reality. And within material reality, there's unlimited universes coming out of Mahavishnu's body, all out of the pores of his gigantic spiritual body. And in one of those universes, there is one solar system. In that solar system, there's one planet. In that planet, there's one continent. In that continent, there is one city. In that city, there is one road. In that road, there is one building. In that building, there is one man, and that man thinks he's the center of everything. And in that way, Prabhupada put it all into context. Just chill. You're really, really small. You're really small. And for the materialistic, it could be a terrifying thing to contemplate. But for the spiritualist, it's not. And the difference is because they're Krishna conscious. Because Krishna is in that person, he's in that temple, he's in the street, and in every other street, and in every other planet, under every other night sky, in every universe, and all the spiritual planets too, Krishna is there. So as long as we're connected to him, we're safe, we're remembered, we matter, and our anxieties can be eased. This is a giant call to context, this verse. Last verse. All right, here we go. The moon, or Chandraloka, is one of the 4 important places of residence for the demigods. Beyond Manasaleka is Sumeru mountain. On the eastern side of this mountain is the planet Devatani, where Indra resides. On the southern side is the planet known as Sangyamani, where Yamaraj resides. On the western side is the planet known as Nimlochani, the residence of Vayu, the demigod who controls the wind. And on the northern side of the mountain is the moon, which is also known as Vibhavari. So Prabhupada writes, all these various planets are within the universe in which our planet is situated. Persons who are too materialistic always engage in sense enjoyment, and then they may worship such demigods to go to these planets. Men with developed consciousness do not waste time making excursions, real or imaginary, to the moon. Such intelligent persons do not endeavor to achieve temporary sense enjoyment. Rather, they apply their conserved energy for the sake of spiritual cultivation. According to the Vedic injunctions, such great personalities ultimately attain the place where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides, predominates, and where there is no death, no birth, no old age, and no disease. On the way to these spiritual planets, such personalities pass through the sun line called Archir Marga, and on the way they can see all the planets between here and the spiritual world. So even if you're interested in the material varieties, you can catch a glimpse of it as you're leaving this universe when you're going back to Godhead. So even in that way, there's no loss. Om Tat Sat. Light of the Bhagavat Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Bhagavan Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. Haribo. All right. So for the last time, for the Light of the Bhagavat, we'll take any questions, reflections, and comments. And this week you can conclude your readings of Light of the Bhagavat and give any reflections in the chat. We'd love to hear them. Anything that stood out. Reflection means anything that you're going to reflect back from the bright light of the sun, moon, that is these Krishna literatures.
I simply just love this book, and I'm so glad that you brought it to our attention, because it, like Eileen was saying earlier, it just being able to use these analogies of nature that everybody understands, seasonality and mountains and waterfalls and rainbows and like all the things, make it so much easier to try to explain what we're doing here and what Krishna has offered us. And so this is just a beautiful gift that Prabhupada left us, and thank you for sharing it.
Jai. Thank you for hearing. Yeah, these little pockets of study, they're like little rainy seasons. We sit for a few weeks and we read it, we get our way through a book, and it's like after we're done, we don't even realize what advancement we've made. But these are beautiful literatures and very potent, very potent. And you're going to be a year older anyway. And last year we read so many books together. So can't take it back. The damage is done. We read like 5 books together now so far. Really important books too. Any more reflections, comments, any questions, things that stood out?
I find it so interesting to think about how if you understand Krishna, you become qualified to not take birth again, and it's like, and that's a good thing. But like for a spiritualist, we'll see it that way. But for a materialist, it's like we try to figure out how to live longer, like on this planet, and like not age, and wanting to be here for 100 and however many years, and it's like it's so missing the point. But but just not knowing that there's another way, not knowing that there's this, this intense joy of that we are speaking of, and even that like we are seeing in you and sharing those pastimes, and like the ways that we can be moved by this love of God, and
Yeah.
like actually want to go back to Goloka Vrindavan, to go where Krishna resides, to actually go and get to like chill and hang out and play and like frolic and dance and sing and milk cows with Krishna. It's like it's it's just we have it, so many people have it so backwards.
Right. It's like the problem isn't how to live forever. The problem is, what are you going to do with that? That's the real question. People are they're trying to get their own limited material situation to continue forever. It's like, well, why would you do that? Why not find out what the best thing is and aim for that? You already are eternal. That's already been granted to you. You already exist. You're a spirit soul. You're not matter. Matter ends. Matter starts. You didn't start. You don't end. That's not the problem. The problem is you don't know that. The problem is you don't have any context of what to aim for, even if you do understand yourself as spiritual. So we really need to be Krishna conscious, and that'll help us be aware of ourselves and also what we're capable of, what we can have as an existence in service to him. Thank you.
Thank you. I also just wanted to name and recognize, like, when you were speaking about like being in association with devotees that um are imbibing and understanding Shastra and Krishna consciousness in a way that is at a more elevated level than each of us are. And, we experienced the other night here at T&T Lock when we interviewed Srinivas, because Rukmini Devi wasn't able to come, and he shared like his favorite pastime. We was so like deeply moved to tears in sharing it. And then, in when you share different pastimes or different elements and are so deeply moved, it's like the way that that affects my heart, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but it's like those are also like little drops of and tastes of deeper bhakti, and it's such a gift to get to receive that from Srinivas, from you, from whomever that we each get to receive that from. But I feel so fortunate to have you in our sangha and to teach us in the way that you do and share your devotion and love, and that I also get to marry you. Feels pretty cool too.
Hare Krishna. It's our good fortune to receive what the devotees share with us and represent it. I'm just sharing what I've received, and I hear that you're grateful for me. I'm grateful for all of you. This is an opportunity for me to refresh on these books that I've been allowed to become acquainted with, and they never get old. They get better and better, and refresh on these leelas and pastimes of Krishna and also of his devotees. And so I always say Tuesday nights are my favorite nights. So thank you all for that. Any other reflections on the light of the Bhagavad? Anything you took notes on?
I was just going to say, when you were talking about verse 42 and the, being in the mode of love, in the mood of separation, and that yearning for Krishna, that is, like recently when I was struggling with japa, that's like exactly what I was striving for. And that's like what I would like sit down. I'm sorry that you can't see me. It's so dark in here. And I just like felt that. I was like, let me sit down and just like try to feel into how I want him more in my life right now.
Yeah. That's a very advisable energy to bring to your japa, leaning into hankering for him. Yeah, this is the gopis are our gurus. They're teaching us. They're the supreme example of devotion. And the Bhagavatam is a text, because this chapter is a chapter for the Bhagavatam. This whole book is extracted from the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is a text that is aimed at sharing the experience of bhakti of several devotees from different times and places over history in relationship to Krishna in his many forms. And it culminates in Canto 10, where these supreme examples, like the gopis, are there. So this is why we read the Bhagavatam. We wouldn't know about this. It's a certain mode, right? It's a certain mode of worship to have that feeling for Krishna. That's our bequeathment. We've received that. It's a gift. It's Lord Chaitanya's gift to us. It's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he made a garland of the holy names, and he strung it with I think it's like he strung it with the string of Krishna prema, love for Krishna and a mode of separation, and he made a garland out of those flowers of the holy name, and he's passing that on to all of us. That's what his line is about. That is the special gift that he's giving, is that particular quality of intense love for Krishna and separation. It's one of the very unique hallmarks of our line. So by reading these books and by chanting Hare Krishna in this spiritual family, like, we're actually becoming qualified to receive those gifts all the way up to the residents of Vrindavan that's coming down from them. It's pretty special. Any other reflections, questions? Anything you put in your notebooks while you were hearing?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Bull. Hi, Krishna. Thank you. Thank you for this. This was awesome. I feel like I missed a session or two. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Got my giant headphones. Um, Something I just turned to that you said, beginning and endings are hard for the soul, not part of spiritual nature. And I think that's I think that's really interesting. And then I had the real light is the Vedas, and this whole thing about glowworms that I can't really know what I wrote, but no glowworms, only sun, moon, and stars.
Yeah, that's from earlier in the book, that in the rainy season, the sky is covered with clouds. So you can't see the sun, you can't see the moon, and you can't see the stars. So because things are obscured, it's dark and things aren't clear. And so glowworms can become prominent. Although their light is insignificant, they can become prominent by lack of any other competition. So the comparison is made to this age of Kali, this age of darkness, that spiritual knowledge is misunderstood, it's obscured, it's reviled, it's ignored, it's made fun of, it's considered uncool, it's not protected, it's forgotten. All these things happen. So what happens? Propaganda from, billboards, nonsense material ideas, or pseudo gurus, cults, false religions, invented things, fly by night, flavor of the month, flash in the pan religion becomes relevant, apparently. And so there's a way in which, that verse was reminding us of where we're living. We're living in a time where it's like there are a lot of glowworms. There's a lot of like firefly like things, but you don't honor the firefly's light and forget about the sun. Better to understand that the supreme light is coming from authentic sources, and because even a broken clock can be right twice a day, right? So it's like, yeah, I can name for you cults that have certain ideas that are actually valid, but they have many ideas that are not. And so rather than relying on that, throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping that whatever we hit happens to be legitimate, going with the tried and true spiritual literatures and hearing them coming down in parampara is actually like getting unfiltered moonlight, sunlight. not hearing
Mhm.
from, demagogues and attention-seeking false gurus and false incarnations, which are, popular and prominent. Plenty of
Right.
that.
Like there's some good dupes, like glowworms are, it's a good example. Like,
Yeah.
you can be fooled very even by these natural sort of offshoots, like, well, I loved it. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay. If there isn't
Okay.
anything else,
Can I make a couple
yeah,
announcements
please.
before you? Firstly, we have 3 birthdays this week from different goddesses on the call right now. Melanie Pope's birthday's on Thursday, and Martine and Samantha Burrier's birthday is on Friday. So we're celebrating you all. Love you, and thank you for being in our Sangha and all your service and presence. You're amazing. And
Krishna's birthday is on,
Krishna's birthday's on Monday.
and
John
Prabhupada's birthday is on
Mastami.
Tuesday.
And Prabhupada's birthday is on Tuesday, and
So it's
Balaram's
kind of a
birthday
big
was
deal.
yesterday. Balaram's birthday was
Kind of a
yesterday.
big week.
It's kind of a big week, and we are having a Janmashtami celebration here on Monday. We don't have class next Tuesday, which is like kind of a miss because it's Prabhupada's birthday, but that is the way the cookie crumbles. We're taking a week off with Shastra class, and then we're starting the Nectar of Devotion, which is going to take way more than 12 weeks. I mean, that's going to be an extended study, I imagine, Shamya.
Yeah.
And you may or may not have seen, I don't know how you could have missed it because it's been the talk of the town, but Shami Pras made a cameo on my Instagram today. And we were sharing about it, and we sent out an email. So never any pressure, but if you want to continue to study and give any donation or none at all, it goes to Shamya. And we're excited to keep studying. So we'll have a week off, and then we'll start, what is it, September 3rd? I believe is the date, the first
Yeah.
Tuesday in September. Yeah. And those are all my announcements. Thank you for your time and your ears.
Jai. All right. Yeah, Nectar of Devotion is going to be great. It's such an important text, Rupa Goswami. And for now, we've concluded Light of the Bhagavad. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Burlington Bhakti Sangha and beyond ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's get that camera on Lord Chaitanya. Let's get a darshan of him before we call it a night. And we'll see you on WhatsApp for any reflections. And next week, although Jai Lord Chaitanya ki jai, Hari Bol. Although we won't be formally meeting, you can start reading Nectar of Devotion. Start with a foreword and introduction. That's an amazing, amazing start to an amazing book. Jai Gaur Hari. Yeah, Rupa Goswami had a very lengthy conversation with Lord Chaitanya. It's described in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in that conversation, he was empowered to understand very, very important principles of bhakti that became the Nectar of Devotion. You will see them at play in the Nectar of Devotion. So, Jai. Everyone have a great week or 2 weeks. See you soon. Hari Bol.